Good afternoon. This is your 2001 April 25th Air Passenger Rights Update. My name is Gábor Lukács. I'm the president of Air Passenger Rights, and I have with me today at the battle stations Dominic and Martin. And I would like to start, of course, with thanking all the volunteers who have been working on making our Air Passenger Rights group possible. Dominic, Martin, Christine, Terry, and Frank, who has been very active on the issue of statutory chargebacks. I'm going to start with just checking on the controls here, and I'm being told that we have sound, which is good, and video, which is good. So I think we are good to go. This is a bit of a new format. I'm not sure yet where those who are viewing are. I'm not sure where I can actually see how many people are watching. So it seems that Facebook has redesigned a little bit the interface. Please bear with me. I'm still trying to get my bearings around. The first issue that I want to talk to you about is the Air Canada refunds. After more than a year of neglect, of failing to enforce passenger rights, finally we have seen at least some movement in terms of Air Canada graciously allowing passengers to get a refund, unless it is from passengers' own money. So what you are seeing, what you see as coming back there to passengers is actually your own money. It is not money that Air Canada itself has taken from you, but rather taxpayers' money. It is on the one hand certainly good news, because it means that eventually people are going to see money and are seeing money. On the other hand, I'm not sure how you feel about the idea of Air Canada pocketing your money and then giving you back tax money. It doesn't make me particularly happy. I think that eventually, ultimately, it is the shareholders, those who have been reaping profits, that should be paying for the refunds, not the public purse. I'm still struggling here with, okay, now it looks like maybe I'm going to see the comments. Okay, now I think I can also see all the comments, which is great. And yes, 58 watching, which is great. Just to answer some of the questions that come up right away from the issue of Air Canada refunds and the announcement that was made. If you have already received a refund through a statutory chargeback or any other form of chargeback, I would not do much. I would not take a further action, because we are consumers, we are not thieves, and therefore we should not be seen as attempting to double dip, as attempting to both getting a chargeback of some form and then trying to get a refund also from Air Canada. That would be wrong. So we should be very careful with that aspect. In terms of what might happen, Air Canada has been talking about this fictitious deadline of June 13th, that you have to ask for a refund by then. I don't believe that there's any basis for that in law. There is no basis for that in the contract between you and Air Canada. It is some kind of internal policy deadline that they came up with. And I would certainly encourage you to request a refund if you have not received a refund yet, as soon as possible, simply to ensure that the money gets back to you. It should be earning interest in your account, not in Air Canada's account. But legally, if for some reason you would miss that June 13th deadline, I don't think Air Canada would have much basis to claim, no, we are not going to refund now the passenger. They cannot unilaterally change policies. That is the source of the whole controversy in part. And that is something that I don't think they would get too far with in a court if they try to tell a judge that they think they can change policies unilaterally. In terms of other airlines, a question that I'm seeing quite frequently popping up, the path forward has been and remains to proceed by way of statutory chargebacks if you paid using a credit card. In most provinces, in fact in 8 out of the 10 provinces, there is a statute that requires your financial institution to reverse charges for transactions that you paid in advance. Definitely if it was on the internet, in some cases even if it was on the phone or other forms, as long as it was not something in person, in most provinces, you would have some form of remedy. It depends on varies from province to province. For example, here in Nova Scotia, it would apply only to online transactions if you purchase something on the internet. On the other hand, if you are, say, in British Columbia, then it would apply to any distance sales contract. So even if you had made it on the phone, by email, by fax, as long as you were not in the office of the travel agent, you are entitled to a statutory chargeback if the services were not available to you for reasons other than your own decision not to travel. So the one exception from statutory chargeback is that if your flight did take off, if your hotel was available, but you chose not to go there, that is not something which is in the scope of statutory chargeback. All other matters are statutory chargeback type of matter that you need to check your provincial laws, what they say. When you receive a statutory chargeback, they also have to refund you an interest that you paid on the outstanding balance arising from that particular transaction. Interest, if you have paid your bill in full, then getting back interest may be a bit more difficult. That is the reason also that we encourage passengers to do statutory chargeback as soon as possible. And let me also mention in this context that statutory chargeback is not something you try or ask for. It's something you do. It is a step that you take, you go through the steps, and then in step 3, you claw back the money. So you're not asking for a favor, you're not asking for someone to do some kind of procedure for you. You simply put them on notice, this is what they have to do, and if they don't comply with it on their own, in step 1 it would be the supplier, in step 2 it is a financial institution, in step 3 you take back the money, and then the ball is in their court to take it to court if they disagree with it. So in terms of Air Canada and Air Canada refunds, if you have previously received vouchers, airplane points, any sort of refund like credit that you didn't ask for, you didn't want, that you were told you have to accept it, and now you want cash because you paid cash originally. And when I say cash, I mean you paid by check, you paid by debit card, you paid by credit card, then Air Canada has to refund you those. That there's no question about it. And what we have been seeing so far is that while there have been some hiccups at the beginning, I'm not hearing many complaints right now about Air Canada making it particularly difficult to get a refund. We have heard cases about difficulties through travel agents who were trying to charge extra fees improperly for passengers who are entitled to a refund. You should never pay any administrative fee or any kind of fee for getting back your own money when the service wasn't available to you. We have also been hearing about situations when someone had a flight, then they got a voucher or credit, they booked another flight which was cheaper, and then Air Canada didn't want to refund them the full original amount, but only the second lower amount. In those cases, after some social media outcry, Air Canada did refund the passenger. So eventually, you should not be out even 1 cent for services you had paid for and you did not receive. That's the bottom line. I would like to also mention that we have been having some good discussions with other organizations that are interested in consumer protection, not only in the area of passenger rights. So I'm going to post here a link to a petition that I already posted it on Friday. It's a petition on Parliament's website which calls for the creation of a Canadian Consumer Advocate Office, or like an ombudsman, some person whose full-time job is to look after consumer complaints across Canada. It is not going to be a magic bullet. It is not going to solve all our problems, but having someone who is full-time working on consumer protection, on monitoring consumer protection across Canada, would be a great initiative, a great step forward, not only for us as passengers, but for everybody else. And so I would like to encourage everyone who hasn't done so yet to sign the petition and support it. I'm looking at questions here. So Kathleen McLarty is asking, what if the flight operated but it was after the global pandemic was declared and the government had advised people not to travel, are you still eligible for a statutory chargeback? The answer is unfortunately no. So the statutory chargeback applies only to a situation where the service was actually not available to you. If the flight did take off without you, then you may have other sources of redress, possibly under frustrated contracts, possibly under some other arrangement because in case of Air Canada says they are also refunding flights even if the flight did take off, provided that the flight was purchased before March 22nd for travel after February 1st, 2020. So there can be some additional arrangements under which you can get a refund, but that's not statutory chargeback. Statutory chargeback deals with the fundamental right of consumers to get a refund for services they have paid for in advance and not received, even though they were available to take the service or take delivery. I'm seeing here a question by Kathy about was supposed to fly Air Transit last April and from New Brunswick. Am I out of luck? Kathy, Air Transit is based in Quebec, so I would suggest that you carefully check what the Quebec law says if you can find a way of seeking statutory chargeback based in Quebec law. I would also check what your credit card statement says, which province's office was where it was actually processed. So you can always sue Air Transit in New Brunswick Small Claims Court, and then they will have to show up and defend the case. That's always a possibility. And Laurie Calvas is asking about refund for flights between 2 Canadian cities, but you live in the US. Laurie, this can be very tricky. I would suggest that you look into Regulation Z under the US law. If you look, there are some similar notions to statutory chargeback. See where you can get with that. You can also sue Air Transit in US Small Claims Court or equivalent forum if the purchase was made while you were actually in the US. Charlene Levarsky is saying, I've now sent third letter for a statutory chargeback, so now I'm supposed to spend $3,200 on my visa. And the answer is yes. You can either do that or you can actually just do some cash advances. That may be a better way. You don't necessarily want to just spend money on things you don't need, but you want actual cash. So what I would do is I would have done the cash advances just right before sending the step 3 letter. And once you have a balance which is equal to the amount of the dispute, then send the step 3 letter so that you first have the money, then notify them, sorry, but this money belongs to me. There is a question, I'm sorry, I'm trying to catch up with all the comments here. Richard Marsh is asking, are you aware of any progress regarding WestJet receiving assistance from the Fed government like Air Canada for the payment to consumers regarding canceled flights? Secondly, do you recommend completing a statutory chargeback process for WestJet vacation packages? With respect to WestJet, Richard, I don't know what negotiations they are having, nor it's really a concern to me because WestJet has to refund passengers regardless of what taxpayers' money they may or may not be receiving. Same situation with respect to WestJet vacations. I would need to know a bit more in which province do you live, how did you purchase your vacation package. If it was purchased using the internet, you could proceed directly by Alberta Consumer Protection Law, because under Alberta law, actually, because WestJet Vacations is a company in Alberta, you also have rights under Alberta law. If you're in BC, I would rather proceed under BC law. That's the easiest. Generally, proceeding based on your own province's laws is often the easiest. But bear in mind that especially when you're dealing with companies in Alberta, you can always look at your own province's laws and at Alberta laws as different basis for getting a statutory chargeback. Cecile is asking, so once you claw back, you immediately cancel your card. So if I don't have the amount on my card that equals to my vacation package I purchased, I don't pay the amount of on CC and clawback difference and cancel my card. However, I didn't think you could cancel your card if there is a balance on your card. So let's get stuff clear. If you say have a $500 balance owing to you to the credit card company already on your card, say for your groceries for the past month, and you want to do a step 3 for $2,500, then you spend down an additional $2,000 by, say, cash advances, so that the balance owing would be looking like $2,500. Then you do the step 3, and you can always cancel your card. It doesn't mean that you don't owe them money, but it's a clear legal communication that you terminate the relationship with the credit card company. So it doesn't mean that you don't owe them money. It means that just that you don't stop doing business with them, and you create a kind of clear point in time that from this point on, I'm not dealing with you. I'm seeing here a question by Pat Ager. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, Pat. While you say a person should not be out 1 cent, in our case, we did get full refund on 7 separate chargebacks with 2 credit card companies. We are still out of pocket over $7,000 for direct expenses incurred when the airline Royal Air Maroc abandoned us for the return flight from Morocco. Alternative airlines to extend accommodation. Part of the requirement of an airline in the event they don't fly is to obtain alternative flights. And that's really an additional problem. Pat, what I would suggest is that you take Air Maroc to court over those extra expenses. Statutory chargeback is not a universal solution. It's not like a magic bullet. We are not here in this group to offer magic bullets for everything and to solve all problems of the world. We cannot do that. That's not realistic. What we can do is to find solutions that solve some problems, some types of problems, and help you to get back at least some of the money. The situation like you're in, Pat, is something which on top of the normal problems that we see with refunds, it goes well beyond that, and it's very important, but it's not as common as what we have seen here. So I would suggest, I'm glad you got your refunds, now go after them for the rest. Clarence, cash advances involve an interest only if it is something that you owe. If they owe you money, they cannot charge you for cash advances, and I simply refuse to pay. You have to bear in mind that all these credit card transactions, they say you owe them. It doesn't mean you actually owe them. Eventually, a judge would have to decide whether you do or do not owe them. So they say you owe, you say you don't, and therefore they're welcome to take it to court if they disagree. I'm not suggesting in any possible way to abuse this, but money which you take out as a cash advance, that's real money. That's money in your hand. That's money which you can go and buy in a store. If they send you a statement that you owe them $1 million, well, that's a piece of paper. Obviously, you have to object to it. You have to give them notice, I disagree with it. But just because they say you owe them $1 million doesn't mean that you owe, doesn't mean that they have any money in their hand, doesn't mean that you have any obligation. It simply say, I could send you also a bill. I'm happy to send you a bill for $10,000 claiming, hey, you owe to Gavin Lukash $10,000, and I hope you will find a good use to that piece of paper because it remains a piece of paper. It's just because someone sends you a formal looking letter with big words, that's not the same as having an obligation to pay. Unfortunately, many corporations use the fact and abuse the fact that people are not that aware of their rights, and if they see something which is written with big, nice, fancy words, they get intimidated, but you shouldn't. I'm looking here now at the questions. One thing more thing that I would like to talk and this really brings us to more discussion about statutory chargeback, is that we have seen success with statutory chargebacks. So we are not talking here about some kind of hypothetical situation, some kind of theory. But just think of the case of Summer Barger, whose case was reported in Global News just a couple of weeks ago by Anna Drua. she went to statutory chargeback in her case because she was very firm, very assertive, unrelenting. Actually, the bank folded and gave her back her money. It won't happen in every case, and I wouldn't bank on the bank folding and giving you back money after step 2. But just because they are telling you some kind of legal sounding nonsense, oh, it's not our policy, oh, you're out of time, you should have really done this within the first 120 days, just because they send you some kind of legal sounding response, it doesn't mean it's right. I would add that what we say is not right because we say it. What we say about statutory chargeback is right because it is backed by the law. So it is not a faith-based art to do statutory chargeback or consumer advocacy in general. The reason that statutory chargeback has proven to be a powerful tool for many consumers to get back their money is because there are laws that support it. There are laws that back it up. And I am pleased to report that after many months of frustration, we had also some positive experience with Capital One. Capital One has been for quite a while this kind of black sheep for MasterCard type of credit card issues. MasterCard in general has been the most consumer friendly as the MasterCard International is concerned. They have been very firm that passengers are entitled to a refund and that the merchant cannot unilaterally change the terms and conditions. They've been very decent about it. And in the MasterCard family, Capital One used to be kind of black sheep, that they would really go against what even MasterCard International would say. It seems though that this has changed over the past couple of weeks, couple of months. The reason is that we reached out to Capital One and had a really great discussion with their legal department and their senior counsel. We gave them all the information that we collected over the past months, and I must mention that Frank has been instrumental in collecting that information and in preparing the statutory chargeback guide that has helped many passengers, has helped many members of this group. And so I had a longish conversation with their legal counsel. I gave them all the information about the statutes from Quebec, from different provinces, from the case law that I was able to find. And after a couple of weeks, they came back and began to issue refunds properly to people. There were actually some people, I believe one member who was even having issues with their credit report, and they put some incorrect information about their credit status on their credit report, and they were fighting that, and that also got sorted out. It got corrected. So it doesn't mean that they didn't have a few unpleasant weeks because that incorrect information was present there in a credit report. But as I mentioned before, the law is clearly on the consumer side. If you didn't get services that you paid for in advance, that the supplier failed to deliver, then the money has to come back to you. And banks also know that. What was also interesting from the interaction with the Capital One is that it seems that it was not, as far as I could sense, there was no ill intent in all the frustration that Capital One was causing. Rather, it was a case of lack of familiarity, lack of understanding of how the law works, how statutory chargeback works, and it seems that they were pretty much oblivious to the fact that statutory chargeback is not the same as internal chargeback. DGraph is commenting here, please talk to RBC Visa, they are stubborn. The solution is very simple. If you can help me reach RBC's senior legal counsel, I'm happy to give them a call. I'm happy to take them through the same steps and explain to them that statutory chargeback is not the same as internal chargeback, as their own Visa's rules, and that they have to follow the law. If you could let me know also in which province you are, it makes things easier. Quebec has very clear good laws. BC has some very clear good laws. Ontario has very broad laws, but in Ontario there has been some misinformation going around. So it's I would say that Quebec in a way has the clearest in the sense that we were even able to find some actual case law on how statutory chargeback works, which was helpful, and some comments about it from legislative history. With BC, the law is also very clear. So this is an ongoing process. One thing that we can say is that in spite of all the misery that the refund issue has caused, which is substantial undoubtedly, we are also working on educating financial institutions, consumers of course, but educating also regulators about the powers they have and what passengers' rights and what consumers' rights are. Anna is asking why some people get refund and some don't. I paid TD debit card and sent a letter to Sunwing and Red Flag. They said they want refund, only I got a coupon. Well, Anna, a couple of things. You paid using a debit card, not a credit card. That's the first problem. The statutory chargeback, step 1 applies to everyone who pays on the internet, but step 2 and 3, in practical terms, you cannot get that kind of reversal of charges if it is a true to God debit card, not a credit card. What you can do, and this depends on your circumstance, and I'm happy to discuss it further with you after today's live, is if you made a contract online, Saskatchewan does have consumer protection laws about requiring merchants to reverse charges to give a refund in such situations. And if, in your case, it was Sunwing and Red Flag, if they don't comply, you can sue them in small claims court. And just think about how much they would enjoy having to fight a case in Saskatchewan small claims court, or the equivalent to that you have in Saskatchewan from Ontario. They won't enjoy it, and the law would clearly be on your side. So there are options for you. I'm looking here. I see here a question by Terry Young. I'm in BC and had no luck with budget vacations booked through a travel agent. So Terry, when people tell me I have no luck, I don't know what on earth they are talking about. Think about Master Yoda. Do or do not. There is no try. Statutory chargeback is not a matter of luck. It is a matter of going through the process. Did you pay using a credit card? Did you use a credit card to pay? Was it a distance sales contract? Did you do it on the internet, on the phone, anything other than in person? If so, then you do step 1, step 2, and step 3, you claw back your money. End of story. Statutory chargeback is something you do. Don't say, don't phone, don't ask, you do it. You go through the proper steps, make sure that you comply with the steps of the statutory chargeback, and you do it. End of story. I've seen also, I'm just looking here through the comments, I've seen a question about misinformation. So Scott, in Ontario, there has been some ambiguity as to what type of bookings are covered or are not covered by statutory chargeback. The source of the confusion is that transactions that are true to God, travel industry transactions that are covered by the Travel Industry Act fall outside the scope of the Consumer Protection Act, some provisions. So the answer is that if you had a flight as part of your package, that is no longer regulated by the province because flights are federally regulated. The financial institutions and the airlines still have to comply with the Consumer Protection Act because it's a statute of general applicability, but the Travel Industry Act cannot be said to apply to flights because the province has no jurisdiction over flights, and Travel Industry Act is not a statute of general applicability. So I don't want to go much into the constitutional law aspect, but roughly it works like this. Laws that apply to every business apply also to airlines. Laws that apply to a specific sector, say travel sector, in a province would likely not be applying to an airline because the province cannot regulate sector, specifically airlines. I'm looking here at more questions. Let's see. Jean Ju is asking, can you do a statutory chargeback with FlightHub and paying with Costco MasterCard? Of course you can. If you paid using any credit card, and if you're in a province that has a statutory chargeback, you can do statutory chargeback. Make sure that you do step one with the right supplier. Make sure that you look up who the supplier was. What I would look up is who actually charged your credit card, and check your credit card statement. Does it say FlightHub there, or does it say there some airline, say WestJet? In most cases, it's going to say there, if you go closely to your credit card statement, it is going to refer to the actual airline or company and not FlightHub. But it doesn't matter. Whoever charged you for an amount, that is your supplier. That is where your step one letter goes. If they don't refund you, you go to step two. Let me see now what other questions there are. I'm being asked here by Danny, there are several provinces that simply don't have protection laws as others. Apply a province that does. Any more advanced there? Well, Danny, I'm not sure if I understand your question. We can discuss it later. Generally, if you're in New Brunswick or PEI, then you may have challenges. But Newfoundland does have very good consumer protection when it comes to at least the written laws. I don't know how much they are enforcing it. That would be something to check. If you're in Newfoundland, call your local consumer protection agency and check with them, okay, what are you actually willing to do here? Let me look now at more questions. From Anna, Montreal. Hi, Gabrielle. Thanks a lot for your help. What happened with FlightHub? Do you know if they are offering refund through Air Canada? Are they operating? My understanding is that FlightHub does provide refunds from Air Canada. They may be a bit inefficient, but it is going to happen. That has been my understanding. There's a feedback that I've been receiving so far. Kimberly Body is asking here, I booked with Sunwing with Scotiabank debit card. First time Sunwing canceled on us, we were forced to rebook. Rebooked and Sunwing canceled on us again. They only gave COVID-19 credit. Now we are out $8,000. I'm also Hungarian too. Well, being a Hungarian, I won't hold it against you, Kimberly. But in terms of the situation you have with Sunwing, I would sue Sunwing in small claims court. I would do step one and then sue them in the small claims court. They will have to show up in court and explain what on earth they are doing, and they will have to give you a refund. Chances are the day before the hearing they will settle. Ayad Derar is asking, I received email from my travel agent 2 weeks ago. He said that he applied for our tickets, refused, but he mentioned that there will be a processing fee. I'm just wondering what is the fee for since I did not travel. Ayat, your travel agent cannot charge you any fee whatsoever. That doesn't sound true to me. If the flight did not take off, if it didn't operate, they have to refund you the full amount. No question about it. The full amount is due, and I would be very, very, very careful with any kind of claim to the contrary. Reagan is saying that FlightHub is under CCAA protection. The monitor is MNP. The fact that they may be under CCAA protection doesn't mean much, because the money is actually held by a third party. It's in the case of Air Canada, for example, it's Air Canada is holding on the money, not FlightHub. But it doesn't matter. If they charge your card, you still have a statutory chargeback right if it was through a credit card. What you need to remember about statutory chargeback is that it is a right you have against the credit card issuer ultimately. So the way statutory chargeback works is that first, you attempt to get back the money from the actual merchant. If they're not available, have gone out of business, they are being unhelpful, you go to your credit card, and their credit card issuer shoulders the responsibility of refunding you, and then they can do whatever they want with the merchant. That's not your problem anymore. So the fact that FlightHub is, even if it goes out of business, your credit card issuer still has to refund you under statutory chargeback. Jennifer Russell is asking, if I book 2 separate flights, do I have to do 2 statutory chargebacks? Absolutely yes. L. Melbury is asking, I'm late to the meeting. If I already asked, please ignore. If we have done the internal CC chargeback and got temporary refund, I've had the money for 7 months now, but not final. Should I go ahead and start the process of Air Canada refunds, which they have just started and are contacting people about? I fear the CC will charge back and miss the AC June deadline. Alea Melbury, I would not be too worried about it. I don't think it would be right for you to also do a refund after you already received the chargeback. I would simply refuse to pay if they attempt to rebill you on your credit card. It is not a legitimate charge, and part of being a well-informed consumer is to have the courage, to have the knowledge to refuse to pay charges that you don't really have to pay. And by no means this is to be interpreted as skipping any obligation you do have under the law. So the principle is we pay everything which is owed, nothing which is not owed. And then if the credit card wants to disagree with you, they can take it to court, they can take whatever action they want, but you as the consumer don't go along with them just saying, well, we think you owe us, so you have to pay. No, it's not how it works. You have to pay only the amounts that are legitimate, that you actually owe, that are based on contractual obligations, are based on legal obligations that you have to pay. Just because they say you have to pay doesn't mean you have to pay. Lilia Goldfraub is asking about Air Transat. I don't know what's happening with Air Transat, Lilia, but what I would suggest, and I want to mention it again and again and again, that with all other airlines, for the time being at least, the way to deal with is through statutory chargeback. I'm putting a link into the discussion here. I hope it's going to show up. So the way to deal with this type of problems is through statutory chargeback, not through any kind of negotiation or ask them to be nice. They won't be nice. You have to assert your rights as a consumer, and you have to take your rights into your hands and enforce them. The way to do so is through statutory chargeback and ultimately by clawing back your money. Seeing a question by Trevor. Swoop canceled the flight I booked to a new destination for them. They never once flew there and still don't. Kamloops, BC. I sent in all the required documents to dispute the charge on my credit union. MasterCard received full credit. Several weeks later, Swoop managed to reinstitute the charge. I called the car dispute center. They said Swoop disputed my claim and that I canceled the flight. Not true. First of all, Trevor, I'm not providing advice, but my suggestion, what I would do if I were in your shoes, I would refuse to pay the amount in question, and I would proceed by way of statutory chargeback. What you did sounds like you may have done internal chargeback. What I would do, if you're in, I assume you're in BC, I'm just trying to figure out if you can tell me in which province you are, it could help. But if you're in BC, or since Swoop is in Alberta, I would simply proceed by way of statutory chargeback, step 1, step 2, step 3, and step 3. If it gets to that, just claw back the money, and then credit union, MasterCard can go wherever they want. They will have to then take action against Swoop because you will have your money back. And if necessary, we even close the account with them. Just bye-bye. You have not been serving me as a consumer. You have not been respecting my rights as a consumer. I will no longer do business with you. I take back the money which is owed to me. I will very aggressively claw back the money, no doubt about it, and then close the account. And if they disagree, they can sue you. Let's see that. You are saying, Trevor, if you're in Alberta, Alberta also has statutory chargeback, assuming you purchase it online. So you can go through the same procedure. Step 1, step 2, step 3, claw back the money, close the account, force them to take it to court if they disagree. Carmi, you're asking about clawing back money. The way you claw back any money is money doesn't have a smell, it doesn't have an association of where it was coming from. So what you need to do is to spend down an amount equal to the amount in dispute, and then tell them, well, this has already been paid once, and you don't have to pay things twice. You have already paid the amount in dispute. They have to reverse that. They refuse to comply with the law, so you are paying back the money. If they attempt to mess with your credit rating, then you can deal with it through appropriate procedures. There are procedures for dealing with fraudulent false reports of owing money. First you take back your money, then you fight issues with credit rating, not the other way around. The fear of a bad credit rating should not, in my personal view, deter you from exercising your rights. First exercise your rights, then force them to clean up the mess they created with the credit rating. I'm looking here at there's quite a bit of more questions. Pat is saying, in the case of PC Financial MasterCard, I had foreseen a likelihood that travel agent would attempt to recover money I had already been given by the CC company on a chargeback and advised them not to pay the money out. FlightHub did as I anticipated, and the CC did pay them in spite of my saying not to. They claimed they had no choice. Well, Pat, whatever PC Financial MasterCard does, it's not your problem. Statutory chargeback, if you do it properly, is between you and the credit card issuer ultimately. So if they want to pay, if they think they have to pay to whatever company, that's their problem. But under the law, they still have to reimburse you. They still have to refund you regardless of what they pay. So it doesn't matter what their interaction is with the merchant. As long as you go through the proper steps, that money is yours. And if they want to also donate money to the merchant, that's the bank's problem, not yours. I'm looking here at Stan Belbin's comment. If accommodations for trip had to be cancelled because of a canceled air transit flight, would this cost be able to be claimed under statutory chargeback? No, Stan, statutory chargeback is only for costs that were part of the same booking, same reservation, same transaction. So if you had a package, say flight and hotel destination on one package, then because the flight didn't operate, if they cancel the flight, you can use the flight, then you can have a chargeback for the entire amount. If you had a flight, a separate transaction, and hotel, a separate transaction, and if the hotel was available at the destination, just you couldn't be there, unfortunately that's not statutory chargeback issue. But if the hotel, the destination was not available, if they were closed, that's a different issue. Then it becomes a matter for statutory chargeback because you paid for service in advance. Those services were not available to you, so they have to refund you. Well, I see, Aletta, that you find the phrase donate money to a merchant funny, but that's really what the message that we need to get across to the financial institutions. When those institutions are not enforcing your right as a passenger to a statutory chargeback, then effectively they are assisting, participating in donating money to the merchant. That's what it is. It's you know, we can put it in a nicer language, but that's really what it boils down to. So I'm looking at more. I'm trying to arrange here my dashboard. I think I still have a lot here to figure out how dashboards work. So I'm seeing here a Pat comment about statutory chargeback. Okay, so Pat, you're saying your comment was not based on statutory chargeback. Okay, that makes sense. Tanya says they say sending me back to Air Canada back and forth. Tanya, ultimately, if you have a situation that the travel agent and Air Canada are paying ping pong, ultimately I would demand from Air Canada to do the refund because it's their obligation. And again, statutory chargeback could be the way to go. Lalita is asking here a question. I got a credit for my canceled flight. Can I still get my money back instead of a credit? If it was in Air Canada, they certainly will refund you now. That's what they are supposed to do. For all other airlines, unless you really voluntarily, openly, knowingly accepted credit, and even then it's not clear. But unless it was if the credit was actually forced on you and not voluntarily accepted by you, then certainly you can still proceed to statutory chargeback. If you look at our links, and I'm going to mention this link again here, if you look at the link, there is no 60, 90, 120 day deadline on when you can start statutory chargeback. So certainly you can enforce your rights. Laurie is asking, is there an Ontario MP that is advocating for us in the group to contact if we are in a group that cannot go to statutory chargeback because the flight went? Laurie, if the flight did go, then it's a more tricky situation, because then you don't have a legal right under consumer protection law to get money back. It's a very good question, but then it is more a question of, well, some kind of other consideration. Generally, consumers' laws are about a situation where you pay for something in advance and you don't get it. It's not available to you. If it is available to you, but you cannot go for whatever personal reasons, that would kind of fall outside the statutory chargeback type of realm. If you can find an Ontario MP who is interested and who is willing to help, that would certainly be very, very helpful. I would love to touch base with any politician. We are pretty much multi-partisan. We are not supporting any particular political party and are happy to talk to any party who is willing to help consumers. So if you can find a political party, MP who is interested in exploring these issues, we would love to talk to them. Here's one more thing I would like to mention. I'm seeing numbers dropping, so perhaps we should get close to wrapping things up, which is that we do have ongoing work with various provincial regulators on various issues, in particular the issue of statutory chargeback. So I would urge you to stay tuned. I hope to have news from some provinces in the not too distant future. And once we have news from some provinces, we hope that it is going to the example is going to be followed from other provinces by other provinces. So just because we are not going into great details about this, we are still working on issues and working on getting those issues eventually resolved. I'm looking here at Ray Gagnon question. If you cancel the flight due to the fact the purpose of the trip disappeared, that's itself not alone a reason for statutory chargeback unless it was a package. So if you had a Disney package, which included flight, hotel, and visiting Disney, Disney closes, that could be a good ground for statutory chargeback. If you booked hotel, flight, and Disney separately, and it's more a situation, let's say I want to go to a conference, they cancel the conference. If I want to get back my ticket, that would be my insurance giving me back the money, because the purpose of the trip is no longer there. It wouldn't be actually the airline giving back the money. Janine Lavini is asking, I'm sorry I saw this question before, where can you find information whether a flight did or didn't go? There are a number of sites. Flightera seems to be one of the sites that seems to be quite good information. You could also get a subscription if you want with Flight Stats. I generally don't use Flight Stats because they have good information, but they charge for it, even consumers, and I don't like that idea. But there are a number of websites that can provide information on what is actually, what flights were available, what flights did take off. Laurie is asking, one thing to mention at higher levels is many of us that live on border towns will not be traveling through Canada because the US has been very different. We should not have to beg for money when we listened to our Prime Minister not to go in March break last year. But Laura, you're quite right, and this is something that when I was presenting before the House of Commons Finance Committee, before the House of Commons Transport Committee, I've been cautioning that there is significant harm being done to the Canadian travel industry as a whole by the delay in refunding passengers, by airlines being allowed implicitly, even though there is no legal basis for it, but through the government's negligence, through lack of enforcement, getting away with not refunding passengers. That harms Canadian travel industry very badly. and that it is going to take a long time before we see recovery if they don't reverse course. Kimberly is asking, besides small claims court, can I do a chargeback of any sort on my Visa debit card? There is no statutory chargeback on Visa debit. You can do only step 1, and then you can sue for a refund, unfortunately. So with a debit card, is one problem with debit cards is that they are not credit cards. You don't have the same rights, the same level of protection as with a credit card, unfortunately. So that's an unfortunate fact. I see now that we are down to 73 viewers from high of I think over 100, and questions seem to be running out. So I'm just going to ask quickly if there are any more questions that we can answer. If the team still has one more question, then I'm happy to answer that. So just Martin and Dominic, anything else that you think I should have answered, haven't answered yet? And in the meantime, I'm going to tell you that we are going to have some interesting court cases coming up, and I will be posting information about that in due course. Some of the air transit tarmac delay case in appeal is going to come up on May 20th. We'll be posting about that, and there will be also some other interesting cases. So please keep monitoring the group, and we can do a lot actually just by drawing public attention to our cause. So don't forget what we discussed last year about Twitter advocacy. Twitter can be a very good tool to draw attention to important issues. Danny Gervan is asking your thoughts on similar issue, Transat, WestJet, Sunwing, and potential sales of Transat. So just to recap, with Transat, Sunwing, WestJet, all these other airlines, the most important tool to get back your money is through statutory chargeback. I'm posting a link again, just that it will be here. Statutory chargeback is a powerful tool. It's not a magic bullet. It won't be applicable to every case, but it is a very useful tool, and it is based on a fundamental principle that if you didn't get the service you paid for, they have to refund you, and that's the important principle. So that's, I think, where we are going to leave things for today. Thank you very much for being with me, and if we have any major updates in the coming weeks, of course, we're going to have another live session. Until then, keep safe, keep physical and social distancing. Make sure that you get vaccinated as soon as possible. I cannot wait to get mine. It will be still a couple of weeks. And just take care of yourself. It's going to be a difficult summer, but these problems are going to eventually go away, and probably in a few months we will have travel somewhat come back, perhaps with vaccination certificates and so on. We'll talk about it when it happens. So for now, just make sure that you preserve yourselves and your loved ones. Have a wonderful week. Thank you for being with me.